Welcome back. Wait till you see today's show. And here's our opening question. What if you want to write a book and you don't know what to write about? Your life just isn't exciting enough. Don't write about what is, write about what if. Oh boy, my name is Dacquino. Our next guest writes about what if. His name is Bob Lee.
Vinny.
Bobby.
Thank you for having me on.
Oh, pleasure. I've heard so much of your writing. Love it. You are a science fiction writer.
That's right.
Tell me a little bit about who you are. How did you get where you are, Bob?
Well, I've written 3 books so far.
Okay.
One was with a very good friend. It's called The Id from Eden, and it's about when the devil decides to use smartphone technology to corrupt people along the lines of the 7 deadly sins.
Uh-oh.
Right? But my real passion is about outer space. I've always loved outer space, spaceships, science
And is this
fiction.
something that started at a young age?
Yes, started way back. My first book that I remember reading was Tarzan by Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Really?
And he wrote a whole series, John Carter of Mars, which they made a movie, Disney made a movie of that a few years ago. So I got into reading science fiction with that. Also, I grew up on Long Island. Every weekend we went to visit the relatives in Brooklyn and Queens. And as a kid, you can't go out and play outside.
Really?
So we would watch TV. Well, what's on TV? Time Machine. Lord of the Worlds.
I love just the idea of time machine, going to a different time, a different era,
Yep.
time when we didn't live in. Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah, and actually, in my second of my Mars series, I've written 2 books in my Mars series so far. The Attempt, where it's what if a cult decides to take their people and go to Mars because they believe that they're going to go to a higher level of consciousness. Along the lines of, I don't know if you remember Heaven's Gate cult. It was back in the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, Heaven's Gate cult thought that there was a spaceship traveling in a comet, and they all committed suicide so they could move to the next highest level of consciousness on a spaceship that was hiding in the comet's
God, and
tail.
this really happened.
It really happened.
This
back
wasn't
in
the
the 90s.
Kool-Aid thing.
No, that was Jonestown Massacre back in
right.
the 70s. That was about 900 people.
Wow.
This was about 39 people, and they all committed suicide because they wanted
Because
to go
they
to a
believed
higher-
they were just going to the next level. They weren't dying, they were moving on.
Right. So in my book, The Attempt, the cult goes to Mars because they believe that there are other things there that will help them achieve their next level of consciousness. In my second book in the Mars series, there are good aliens that come and ask for our help against evil aliens. So
It's interesting, when we think of outer space, I know in my era, my generation, outer space was Mars. You know, they talked about Martians and
Right.
you know, all the, and supposedly there was life on Mars. Now, I think we still believe that there might be some life on Mars. So your books really are based on Mars, on the what if.
right, it's what if a cult goes to Mars
Okay.
while there's also NASA astronauts there who are looking for life on Mars. So they're digging in the soil.
So
trying
they
to
actually find people who originated here.
No.
No?
It's actually what happens is, of course, like all the old science fiction movies, there's evil aliens
Okay,
that
of
come
course.
to set up a Mars base to destroy humanity.
Oh.
And so there's, of course, big battles. In my second book, The Emissary, we use the technology of the aliens to build flying saucers. And I'm about halfway through my third book, which concludes the trilogy, where we take our flying saucers and we go kick alien butt, is basically it.
So then there's this war. I've lived through a number of your wars. They're fascinating. I love the way you set up the action. So your first book is The Attempt,
Correct.
and then you went to The Id from Eden.
No, actually, Id from Eden was first,
Oh,
and it's
okay,
not
right.
outer space.
Then, okay.
So what I also do is I've always been involved in groups that support NASA and outer space, like the National Space Society. In fact, what I do is I write science fiction book reviews for their website and also for their magazine.
Now, this magazine is geared to science fiction.
No, it's actually geared to support living and working in outer space.
Oh.
So the group, National Space Society, works with Congress to enact laws that support NASA and outer space development. And so the types of book reviews I usually put in here are more factual ones. So for example, Elon Musk, who founded PayPal, has a company called SpaceX, which is working on private launches in space. And he actually wants to be able to set up spaceships that go to Mars and set up a colony there.
So what you do is you write articles for this magazine.
Yeah, I write book reviews for the magazine.
So
And
you
also,
read a book, and then you write about what you think about that book.
Right.
So a lot of good books.
Yeah, there are a lot of very good books. And part of the reason I wrote my Mars series is it's very hard to find near future, near Earth environment science fiction. Sort of like if you saw the movie The Martian, it's very hard science fiction about the 2030s when we send astronauts to Mars. So it was hard to find books that deal with the moon and Mars,
Yeah, right.
2030s, 2040s. So I decided to write my own because I love that stuff.
Yeah. Well, who decides what book you will review? Is that your choice?
It's my choice. Yeah, there are a number of us on a book committee, and we use our own wherewithal to figure out what books are out there. We're always scouring for new books. We talk to the publishers to find out what books are coming out later this year and get preview copies for them.
Oh, so you do get preview copies.
Yes.
So then you read them, and then you basically tell what the book's about and whether it's worth reading.
That's right. That's exactly what I
Ooh.
do. And it was always my passion. I liked it when I was younger. When I got older, I used to work for IBM in the technical areas. I worked for IBM for 33 years, so I didn't have much time to read
Tell me a
science
little bit
fiction.
more about that, because I know that many writers, even though they're not writing about their own lives, their lives have a lot to do with what they write about. And you were in technology. So you're fascinated with this whole technology thing. What sort of work do you do? I mean, what when you say technology, what does that mean?
Well, I used to run one of our websites, for example.
Oh, okay.
And we would put out all about our new announcements on there. But actually, the most interesting job I had was in a group working with IBM Research on speech recognition. So if you're familiar, for example, if you say Siri and you talk
Yes.
to, or Hey Google, and you talk to the machine, we worked on that at IBM. In fact,
Oh,
IBM
wow.
was one of the first ones to work on that technology
Yeah, that-
way back in the 1960s.
That infamous woman who talks on the thing, and
Yeah, and it types.
yeah. Oh,
Right.
wow. Wow.
And that was really fascinating. So I learned a lot about how computers recognize voice, artificial intelligence.
So it fed your passion.
Right, it fed my passion, but I didn't have much chance to read outside of my work. And I wrote technical documents, I wrote requests for proposals. So I was used to writing, but never fiction. So now that I'm retired, I can get back to my passion.
So you needed to go to another place, and you went to outer space.
Right, that's exactly it.
Makes sense. So you went to outer space, and did you write about science fiction as a kid? I mean, like, did you do any high school kind of writing? When did it actually happen?
I think it happened after I retired because I
Really?
got back to reading the things that I loved.
There you
And one of the things that triggered me was the book The Martian. And the book The Martian I thought was fantastic. There's no aliens in it. It's pure hard technical science fiction. And I wasn't writing book reviews, but I contacted the National Space Society, head of the book committee. I said, this is a book that all of the members of our organization would want to read. And
Were
so
you
that's how I got.
like an Isaac Asimov and
Yes.
Ray Bradbury fan?
Yes,
I
absolutely.
loved Ray Bradbury. I taught young adults for a number of years, and there were things like Ray Bradbury wrote a wonderful story called All Summer in a Day that took place on, I believe, Mars, where all summer happens one day, and the kids were like bullies, and they bullied this one girl who missed that very brief coming out of the sun. And it was interesting because what he did is he combined some of the concerns and themes of young adults with science fiction. Do you have themes that you want represented in your books? I mean, are there messages that you give your readers in addition to the setting? What are the themes of your books?
In my second Mars book, The Emissary, one of the themes is about redemption. There's a villain in the book, which is the head of the cult, and can such a person achieve redemption? Also, my good alien kind of messed up. And one of the things that he's doing when he comes to request our help is he's trying to atone for the ways he's messed up in the past.
So there's a good versus evil theme.
There's good versus evil. There's a, can an evil person be redeemed?
Ah, there you go.
Right?
And is a good person always good? All right, interesting. Now, I want to backtrack because I know I'm going to get emails or calls about your magazine articles. Mm-hmm. This whole idea of writing reviews, is there money in this? I mean,
yes.
Can you actually make money writing reviews?
Yes, you can.
Oh, really?
Yes. So I don't do it for the money.
Right.
I do it because it's my passion. But it's a nice little sideline, and it's easy to do because there are books that I want to read anyway, and then I write a 600 to 800 word review, and I get paid for it for the magazine. I also do free ones, usually of science fiction, that are posted on the website.
Interesting. So you can get paid doing that. Books, I already know. It's a painful experience if you're looking to get rich on it. It doesn't always happen, but when you're writing for your passion, writing because it's something you really want to do, that's your payment. That's what you get. And I try to urge writers all the time.
Well, I'm also entertained by my own characters. I like to play. I like to play on various tropes of things that we've seen.
Yeah.
So, for example, in the first Mars book, The Attempt, there's this bit character who he does nothing but spend his time sitting and perusing NASA photos looking for aliens. And there are people that do this.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
And he's convinced NASA is hiding evidence of aliens on Mars.
Are they?
Well, in my book, he's right.
Yeah.
Nobody believes him, but he's right.
What about in your world, Bobby?
In my world,
Are there such things as aliens? Is there another universe out there?
a lot of people believe it, and because I'm a technical person, I follow through the different discussions. So for example, there's something called the Drake equation, which is to try and calculate how many intelligent civilizations are there in our galaxy. So you take the number of stars in our galaxy, which is easy to calculate, then you make an estimate of how many of those have planets, and it used to be fewer than we know now through like the Kepler Space Telescope, which is constantly discovering new planets, and how many of those planets are in the Goldilocks zone, which is what a term for where the Earth is, where you can have liquid water, because we believe that you need liquid water.
Because there are certain things, in order for it to be real, there's certain things that have to be in place, like water.
Right.
And that's oxygen?
No, we used to believe there were a number of things. Now it's pretty much, if you have liquid water, there's a good chance that life exists. But if there's alien intelligences, there's another famous term called the Fermi paradox, which is if there are intelligent aliens out there, when you calculate it, it wouldn't take them long to to populate the whole galaxy. So where are they? How come we don't see any
Yeah,
evidence?
where are
of it?
they?
Now, some people believe there is evidence, like if you watch Ancient Aliens
Right. Oh,
on
yeah.
TV. Right? Some people believe they're here. There's a famous quote by Carl Sagan who says, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And we don't have that extraordinary evidence yet.
See, that's one thing about science fiction that always fascinated me. That science fiction, that's like saying it's fake real or it's real fake. And they're two opposing terms. You know, you need facts for science, but fiction is non-factual. Well, or at least based on fact.
But it's based on facts. So
Based
you're
on
doing
fact.
the what if.
And you're doing the what if.
Right.
Yep. And interesting. So I love that. That to me is escaping. When I sit at that computer and I write, I leave where I am. And I go to a place. I go to a better place. You know, that expression of going to a better place.
Well, the other thing that fascinates me is, because I have a pretty wide range of reading, and I like, for example, I don't know if you've ever read Krakauer's Into Thin Air about the Everest expedition.
No, I didn't.
It's why do people climb Mount Everest, which is so dangerous?
My brother is a CEO in a major company, and he's been mountain climbing for years.
Right. Well, do you know there's a group called Mars One, which a number of years ago said the hard part about it's not hard to get to Mars. The hard thing is to get to Mars and then get back because of all the fuel that you need. So
My
they
father used to say that falling is not a problem. Landing is the
right.
problem.
So what they decided to do is say, we will use, where we are with current technology is close to be able to send people on a one-way trip to Mars and set up a colony there or a settlement.
Yeah.
Right? You know how many volunteers they got? 200,000 people.
Oh, my God.
Volunteered. 200,000 people go on a one-way trip to Mars. You're not coming back, and you probably won't survive. MIT did a paper that analyzed it and
That's
said,
pretty scary.
well,
Think
climbing
that you're
Mount
going
Everest
and
is
not
scary.
coming. But Mars is the frontier of the 1800s and 1700s when people went west and didn't know if they were ever coming back east.
Well,
you know, it's a dangerous trip.
Part of the reason I join groups like the National Space Society or the Planetary Society is not just, the what if, colonize Mars, but how do we improve life on Earth? So there are groups that are looking at, we're running out of resources.
Yeah.
So there are two main companies that are looking at mining asteroids.
Wow.
And mining asteroids for not only the materials, but also for fuel to be able to do other things.
So do you think it's feasible? I mean,
Absolutely.
will there someday be a colony?
Absolutely.
Really?
And
wow.
by the way, we know that our sun will only last us another couple billion years. So
my God, couple billion?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Then it'll become a red
I hope
giant.
I'm still
and
there.
It'll right. Will we be there? That's that's one of the Fermi paradox things. Is maybe aliens kill themselves off at a certain point, either through ecological disaster, or they decide they don't want to leave their planet. They get burnt up by their sun, or they bomb themselves to oblivion.
Some of the things that are considered far-fetched, I remember as a kid. I remember going to the World's Fair.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I remember that too.
Yep.
I went to
and
down
we're
in Queens.
near where LaGuardia Airport is today.
Yep.
And I remember going there, and I remember going to an exhibit where they said, someday when you're talking on the phone and you're sitting there in your underwear or your pajamas, people are going to see you. They'll actually be able to see you talk. And I was like, yeah, right. That'll never happen. People will never will allow it. Now it's a joke.
Well, I am constantly amazed by the technology we have. There's apps, for example, there's apps where you can take your smartphone, hold it up to the sky, and it'll tell you what planet's there, put an outline of the constellation. It's amazing.
A GPS. Was it GPS? Mm-hmm. You're driving along, and it's telling you where to make a right turn. It's like, who's watching me up there to know, or to be there, and it goes, recalculating because you made the wrong turn. It
Right.
knows where you are and what you're doing. The other thing that fascinated me as a kid, when I was like 12 years old, 13 years old, I was a paper boy. So on Fridays, I would go and I'd have to collect for the newspapers. While I was collecting, my parents and siblings were eating dinner. So when I finally got home after collecting, my mother would take out the 4 or 5 pots to warm the corn and the meat and the whatever else we ate. And it would take a while for her to warm all this food up. Then they invented this thing called the microwave. It blew my mind. You could take my plate, walk into this box, shut the door, press a button, and 1 minute later, it's just as hot as it was. No pots, no pans, everything was right there. To me, it was like magic. No invention, no science, magic.
Well, technology is moving so fast. Think
Yeah.
about, because I worked at IBM with computers that filled this room, for example, and now your watch is more powerful than those computers. I think I saw something that your iPhone is something like 18 million times faster than the computers that we had back in the 70s.
Yeah.
And people are working on, I don't know if you saw just the other day, they discovered a planet around the nearest star, Alpha Centauri, actually Proxima Centauri.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
And there are plans in place that a Russian billionaire is funding, actually, to send little microsatellites, just a little wafer on a chip with a camera and all the technology that you can pack into that, and use lasers to hit a sail that boosts it all the way there at about 1/4 of the speed of light. So in 20 years, we could have satellites there figuring out what is this planet like.
Bobby, you know what I love about you? When you talk about all of this, your eyes twinkle. I swear to God they do. And I could see you thinking, and there's so much information in that head of yours. And to be able to take it and use it and create books out of it is exactly what I try to tell our audience, our writers, that what you need to do is to take that passion and turn it into stories, books. It gives you an opportunity where you can't actually, at this point, go to Mars. You can in your books.
That's right.
When you get in there and you create those stories, you're going. Whether you physically do it or not, mentally and spiritually, you do.
Well, and I try to make it realistic.
Yes, and it is.
Right. And it's because I read a lot of these, I try and use all the latest technology and thinking. So, for example, Buzz Aldrin, the second person to step on the moon in Apollo 11, wrote a book about setting up a Mars cycler. So if you send a big space station, for example, on a certain orbit, you never have to do anything. It just cycles between Earth and Mars back and forth.
Wow.
So think of it like a cruise liner.
Yeah.
You just take your little boat, your little rowboat out to the cruise liner, and you have this nice, giant place to live in on your trip.
But how long does it take to get from here to Mars? I mean, we're not talking about a day trip here.
Well, right now it takes 6 to 8 months to get there, but NASA's working on
used
technology
to take that
to go
get
faster.
to get from England to the United States.
That's right. Well, they have plans in place, and they're testing engines to make it even faster. So it's well within our capabilities over the next 20 years to have a settlement on Mars. So I find that exciting. And, we really, I mentioned before that the sun in a couple billion years will heat us up. There are other dangers, for example, like asteroids crashing into us. There was one that just passed by the Earth last week.
But there were typhoons and...
Right, but we can't do anything about those. But we could about an asteroid. If
we can?
Yes. NASA tracks, it has a program, and it tracks all the near-Earth asteroids that have a possibility of hitting us. There's one that'll pass by in about 12 years.
Whoa.
That if it passes by in a certain location, it'll come back and smack us 10 years later in the 2030s.
Oh, interesting.
So there are ways to deflect it outside of Bruce Willis, as in the movie Armageddon. He's getting a little old. But there's a famous quote by science fiction writer Larry Niven, which is, do you know why the dinosaurs went extinct?
Why?
Because they didn't have a space program. They got smacked by the asteroid. Whereas
Yeah.
we could actually do something. In fact, NASA has plans to do an asteroid redirect mission to go out and capture one.
I mean, look at now what we're doing with science. I mean, there are more 100-year-old people than there ever have been before. I mean, we're living longer. I don't know if we're living better, but we're living longer than we ever have before. Bobby, bad news. Time is flying, man. So talk to them. Recommended reading. What if I'm interested in writing science fiction, what should I be reading?
That's a good question, Vinny.
Thank you.
What I would do is, if you're interested in reading science fiction, if you just type in Google, Google has like everything, right?
I know. Google scares the daylights out of me.
Type in top 100 science fiction stories, and you will find a list of them.
Really, and it'll just go through, and you
Right.
can break it down too, right? With Google, I mean, you could say
Oh, yeah.
about Mars, about
Yeah,
Venus,
about Mars, about aliens, about robots.
wow,
You name it.
fascinating.
So I would
well,
start
I
with
want
that.
you to keep writing, and I want you to just touch on these books again in the last minute that we have. Your books are
Okay, Id from Eden was the first
Okay.
book. I wrote that with a very good IBM friend. It's
Okay.
about the devil corrupting people with
Whoa.
smartphone technology.
Yep.
Right? Then I have 2 books in my Mars series. The Attempt is the first one, where a number of people, including a cult, go to Mars. Evil aliens come to try and destroy us, and what happens. Second book is The Emissary. The good aliens come and ask for our help, and they'll provide us with technology to help save them.
and now you're writing another book
And
to
I'm
follow
writing the
this.
third book in the series, so it's the conclusion of the trilogy. And in that book, we go kick alien butt.
Wow. So, I think we're getting signals here. I'm getting the
If anybody needs to contact me, I think they have my email
good
address.
email address.
Bob Lee,
for
NSS.
Bob Lee
NSS for National Space
NSS
Society at AOL.com.
at AOL.com.
And I believe the graphic also has
There you
some
go.
links
And
for
you
my...
welcome responses.
Yeah, if anyone wants to know more about either my books or science fiction
And do you
or
talk
outer
at schools
space,
and talk at places? Do you do talks?
I haven't. I used to go out for National Engineers Week when I was at IBM, talk about technology, but I don't have anything scheduled right now. But if anyone would like me to talk, just send me an email.
Sounds good. Get in touch with Bob Lee. Thank you for tuning in. Glad to have you, and certainly
Thank
glad
you.
to have you.
Thank you,
Bobby.
Vinny.
Thank you for coming to us today.
Thank you.